Hello, hello. So, let's say you made up your mind on a story and you want to get to drawing. What would be the number one thing that I would advise you on before you start? Well, it would be thinking about timing and frame rates. Very few things that you will draw will move at the same speed. Most things will alternate between speeding up and slowing down. The best and most simple example that I know of is the swinging of the pendulum. As you can see in this picture, you will draw more of the edges of the movement because as the pendulum swings up, it starts losing speed, and the opposite is true when it goes down again. This effect of having one movement with different speeds is true to most movements, whether it is a car speeding up and slowing down, or a guy winding up for a punch, quickly delivering it and then slowly regaining balance. This is always happening, and you have to plan for it. The easiest way to do so is to draw the keyframes, which are the most important stages of the movement. Once you've done that and you're satisfied, then you can start drawing the in-betweens, and then just add or take away pictures as is needed in order for it to look like natural movement. I feel like this process may be the one that gives you better quality results, but because it makes you think and work ahead, it's also more, time consuming or just more complicated. I myself am doing it a bit different. Before I start drawing any movement, I kinda like to visually see it in my head, and I mentally filter the different velocity stages. Then, once I know at which time I need to draw more or less, I just go by instinct and I draw linearly from the first to the last frame. At the end, I put it in the editing program to play the scene and see whether I need to cut any pictures out, or if I need to stretch any pictures out frame-wise to fill the gap, or in the worst case, if I need to draw any extra pictures. So with that in mind, you might have gotten the idea that frame rates are just something with which you can play around to fix timing issues. And that's true, but it's also a way to save yourself from an unbearable workload. You might think about making an anime with 10-minute episodes. I wouldn't encourage you. Why? Let's do some number juggling. About 24 or 25 frames per second are needed to create naturally smooth looking movement. That's why this was the industry standard for cinematic movies. But if you have to draw every frame yourself, you start lowering your standards. Just think about it, 24 pictures for 1 second. That is 14,400 pictures for 10 minutes of animation. And I don't know how fast you are drawing, but even when I'm hurrying up a lot for an ugly one, I still need at least 5 minutes for one picture. So in this hypothetical, I would need 1,200 hours, or exactly 50 days of non-stop work for these 10 minutes of animation. And that's not calculating in all the errors that you're going to make and that you have to fix. So how can you realistically produce 10 minutes of animation? Well, first we'll go the Japanese way and use 12 frames per second even in the most important scenes. That means we're animating on 2s, because every picture is seen for 2 frames. That would halve our 50 to now just 25 days of full-on work. It might look a bit laggy to people that are not used to this frame rate, but I've heard from many people that they actually appreciate that look and that they don't like anime in higher frame rates at all. Can we do anything else with the frame rates in order to save time? Absolutely. Just like real anime, our project should have a hierarchy of movement. Things that are more upfront or that have more emotional impact, and things that are happening in the background or that are just not that important for us to animate with higher frame rates. So about half of our animation we can do in 3s or 4s, meaning 8 or 6 frames per second, which I'd say takes another 30% of work time away, leaving us at about 17.5 days of work. Then again, not every second of our anime will have animated movement. Again, about half the time we can use lazy movement or just no movement at all. If you don't know what that is, lazy movement, there's a link in the video description. So with all this, we are still left with 8.75 days or exactly 210 hours of work, which is still a lot, but that's animation. It's hard and work intensive. The best we can do is to cut corners and get better ourselves, and as you can see, this corner cutting got us down from 1,200 hours to 210 hours of work. So in a 10-minute episode we saved ourselves from about 1,000 hours of work, and that's quite a deal, I would say. This example was just to show that the number one struggle of the animator is being torn apart by wanting to create something beautiful, but also wanting it to be manageable. It's typical perfectionism versus realism. In my personal opinion, it's not a bad thing, striving for greatness, but you should know that the only thing it may do is wake you up to the reality of the craft. If you took that hit, but are still interested in animation, you're going the same path that I do. And so, if you're interested in more of this stuff, stay notified and we'll meet again when we get great together.